Well, good afternoon and welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz. That's right, it's afternoon tea. And today in the studio, I have Jan Edwards joining me. So I just want to put out a little disclaimer and a little trigger warning that today's topics will and may trigger some viewers. So please be advised that there is a disclaimer out there. We are not here to upset or bring any triggers to anyone out there. And if you feel that today's show will do that, please do not tune in. I'm asking you not to. If you would like to know more, please do tune in and please share with people because this tea time is for awareness space. So I'm going to share a little bit on Jan Edwards and then she's going to get right into it and then we'll have a good old tea time. I'll sit back, have some tea, and then we'll have some inspiration and motivation on how we can make a change for such a hard topic. So Jan Edwards is the president of Paving the Way Foundation, an organization that is committed to empowering communities to fierce disruption in the cycle of child trafficking around the globe. This is accomplished through educational and training programs that's to break the cycle. Jan spent over 25 years as an executive in sales and marketing, working in the organizations like Time Warner, Bright House, and the United Nations and other international groups before taking on worldwide initiative to prevent children from being exploited. Paving the Way has educated over 14,000 youths and adults the past 4 years. Mrs. Edwards has been featured on NBC, multiple podcasts, and iHeart Radio as an influencer on prevention education. Prevention Education was awarded Orlando's Magazine Women of the Year and Women of the Rise Community Impact Leader 2019 and the American Haitian Art Network 2020 Community Advocate for her organization work. Jan is a writer and co-director and producer of the award-winning film Trapped in the Trade, which was featured on CNN. For more information on Jan Edwards, please check out Miss Liz's Tea Time page and all of my platforms. So welcome, Jan, and thank you so much for coming and joining me on Tea Time today.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Miss Liz. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you.
So could you get into how it all began and how it started, the foundation?
So about 8 years ago, I was invited to the Get Health Summit at the UN by a friend of mine. And you know when you go to conferences and stuff and you either meet people or you see people speaking and you're not quite sure why, but you got to talk to them? Well, that's what happened to me. There's an extraordinary man. His name's Dr. Mahari. He happens to be a neurologist. He lives up in Tennessee. And he was speaking about broadband and cell phone service and the challenges in the medical field. And when he got done talking, we just exchanged cards and we just exchanged, texts. And he runs a 501c3 called People to People, where he gathers the diaspora of Ethiopia to help the orphans there, right? So we chatted via text, we chatted via email, and I said, I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you. And he said, me too. It's going to have to wait till next month, though, because we're going to Ethiopia. I'm like, awesome. Have a great time. Send some pictures, right? I'll look forward to talking to you. Come back. And he sends me an email right back and says, do you want to go? Well, it's not every day you get invited to go to Ethiopia.
Yeah, not every day.
No. Well, and by an Ethiopian who's doing work in Ethiopia, right? So I never forget, I was sitting at lunch with my mom and my daughter. My mom was across from me. My daughter's next to me. My mom's like, you're not going, are you? Being a mom, just wants to keep her kids safe. And my daughter's like, you're going, right? So I went. And it was there that I witnessed human trafficking, but I didn't know it was human trafficking. I just saw, if anybody's ever been on a mission trip, you're exhausted at the end of the day. You just want a hot shower, some food, and go to bed. And, we're in our little van toddling back. And I look out the window. It's just a moment in time. It's 2 older men, 2 younger women, and it just didn't feel right. That gut feeling? Yeah. So when I got back to my sponsor's house, I'm like, what was that I just saw? And he said, oh, it's probably human trafficking. Like, oh, would you like a cup of tea? Very nonchalant. And I go, hang on a second. What are you talking about? Well, he said, Jan, Ethiopia has 4.5 million orphans. We're the #1 source human trafficking into the Middle East. And I remember sitting there, you got to get this, 8 years ago. So no Epstein, no Maxwell, no Nygaard, you're right, none of the high profile cases have come out. And I said, hang on a second. I said, are you telling me people are selling people? Like, I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And he looks at me like I got two heads. He's like, yes, Jan, where you been? And I said, well, I live in Orlando. It's the happiest place on earth. We don't talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we talk about Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. Well, the Sunshine State, right? And he said, Jan, he said, this is a $150 billion industry. It was right there. It got laid on my heart.
Wow.
I came home and I did some research and I found out that Florida has the third highest number of calls to the National Trafficking Hotline. Now, that's a front side of the hand and a back side of the hand kind of issue. The front side is people are, we've done a great job educating people because they're picking up the phone and calling, right? So it's good. And we have the third highest populated state in the country. The back side of the hand is they're seeing something they feel like they should call about, right? So it's good news, bad news for us. And that really started my journey. And the thing that I was really struggling with was why is no one talking about this? If we have the third highest number of calls, then I found out at the time the average age was 11 to 14 that was being recruited into trafficking. I'm like, why are we not doing something about this? And so I don't know a lot. However, I know a lot of people. So I started picking up the phone and calling people to see who else I could talk to. So I talked to people at Homeland Security. I talked to people at Florida Department of Law Enforcement. I talked to undercover police officers, and I also talked to survivors. And I asked them all the same question, and that was, what's missing that would make the biggest difference? And they all said awareness. They said, people don't know this is happening. Well, my background's in marketing and advertising. That was something I could do. People thought I was nuts. They're like, Jan, you need to do a safe house. You need to do recovery. And I'm like, no. I'm over here. I'm a business person. My brain functions over here. Let's get to the source. Let's get to the root. And let's prevent people from experiencing this type of trauma. And so initially, I was really focused on parents. Now, remember, again, this is 8 years ago. They didn't want to talk to me. They couldn't even be with the thought of the conversation. And I'm a little assertive. Especially when I get a bone in my mouth like this.
You're like me.
Uh-huh.
I ain't stopping until I'm done digging.
And I'm like, fine, heck with you. I'm gonna go talk to your kids. Like, I get it's uncomfortable for you, not a problem. Talk to my daughter. We talked about everything, right? I'm like, I'll go talk to your kids. So that really was what started this journey of educating youth. So I did 2 years of market research. I wrote my curriculum. I wrote I wrote our award-winning film in literally 2 days. It was a total download from God. And, I went out and had conversations with people to test it. I'd show the film, we'd have conversations. And then at the end, I'm like, okay, what worked? What didn't work? What should I say? What should I take out? What do I need to add in? So for 2 years, I'm just testing this curriculum with people. And finally, we got to a point where we launched the film and we launched the curriculum 4 years ago. And since then, we've just been at it. And people are like, Jan, how do you get in the schools? I'm like, well, I talk to people. We share with them what we do. We talk to parents. We talk to PTA. We talk to principals. And what I've discovered is when there's someone at the school that really understands what's happening, they'll take this on right with me and they'll be a dog with a bone and get it into the schools. I've got principals that are like, I've sent emails to the parents. I put stuff on Facebook. We're doing this thing, right? I have other schools that are like, we're doing this thing and we're going to send a letter to parents and everything in between. Churches. We've been in front of, several church youth groups because people automatically assume, well, those are the good kids. Nothing bad's going to happen to them. Well, there is no socioeconomic, demographic, or geographic boundary for this crime. You can be literally under 1 year old and all the way up to 75 years old and be exploited for whether it's your body, your mind, or your money.
Wow. So what gave you the drive to call it Paving the Way Foundation? Yeah.
Well, we're going to go back to my experience in New York at the UN event. And I was sitting next to a gentleman that had just spoken earlier that day, and we gotten to know one another a little bit. And it was on the panel where Dr. Mahari was speaking, and they were talking about the challenges of keeping the cell phone towers charged. And I remember thinking, because they were driving trucks to drop off gasoline to keep whatever they needed to keep going, right? And I leaned over to my friend and I said, why don't they use solar panels? They're in Africa. It's like a lot of sun, I'm like, right. I'm thinking logically.
You're like me. I'm like, why can't they do this? Like,
hang on a second. Right? See, Liz, if you and I ruled the world for just a little while.
There we go, right?
Right, and then give it right back. Anyway, and he leans over me and he goes, there's no roads. And over in my head, because I hadn't been to Africa yet, right? I'm like, okay, all right. And I lean over and I go, why aren't there any roads? He leans over, corruption. I'm like, okay, well, that was interesting. At the time, this was way before I'd gone to Ethiopia, or about a year and a half, 2 years, almost 2 years. And I had a friend that was actually doing, creating, not roads, but in the same vein with used tires.
Okay.
Right. And I thought, well, okay, hang on. They don't have road. It rains a lot. It's hot and it's dry, and then it rains a lot. This would be a great answer to solve roads. And I'm thinking, if I'm a dictator, right, I'm just pretending for a moment I'm a dictator. If I give the people outside of my big city a pathway to get into my city, sell their goods, even if I charge them 50%, right? Even if I sell a bushel of vegetables for $1 and 50% goes to the government, that's 50 more cents than I had yesterday,
exactly.
Right? So I'm like, okay, well, we just need to bring some roads, right? So I'm having conversations with him. And it just wasn't really going anywhere. That's how I always know I know the path I'm supposed to take, because God taps me right and he taps me left, right? He's like, nope, come back, right? And I remember sitting in a driveway of a friend's office building, and I was really thinking of a name for this company, right? And it was like, Paving the Way. We're going to pave the way. Now, don't get me wrong. I do get phone calls occasionally from people that want to know our price for blacktop. However, I really am clear who I've become over the past 8 years is like the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
Right. I really am paving the way for people to have powerful conversations. We as an organization really are paving the way for our youth to be educated and for our parents to be empowered to have those uncomfortable yet necessary conversations about this topic. Because I am clear, our parents are our front line, and by empowering our kids, we can cut this stuff off at the knees.
I am just blown away by the numbers. Like, and why are we not talking about it? It's like you said, why are we not talking about something with these numbers?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I just heard too, a couple of weeks ago, because I try to hop on as many webinars as I can. I'm probably on 2 to 3 webinars a week, because there's always new data coming out, right? Yep. And one of the webinars I was on said that the age is now dropped from 11 to 14 to 10 to 13.
Wow.
And it made sense to me because of all the online stuff, right? I mean, this is the most dangerous tool you can put in a child's hand.
Yep.
A friend of mine who works for Homeland Security says the moment you give your child a smartphone, it's like giving them a loaded gun.
It is.
They have access to the world, which is super cool, but guess what has access to them?
It's scary, right? It truly is scary. Even as adults, some of us adults don't understand the power of these phones.
No. And it's interesting because the Nikosi summit's going on right now. And I was listening to a young woman from Sweden speak. And she said that so many of these young girls have no idea. They just have no idea that when you take a picture for OnlyFans, right? You've been seduced, you've been coerced, you've been manipulated into thinking you're going to earn all this money.
Yep.
But the moment that picture leaves your phone, there is no getting that picture back.
Yeah, there's no turning back.
Mm-mm. And the moment it's uploaded onto some site like OnlyFans and somebody's paying for that, they're going to download that picture and then they're going to upload it on all the other sites they're on. So the challenge of online exploitation makes it really holographic exploitation, right? It's not just linear. It's not just, one-on-one in this sphere. It's online. It's out on Pornhub. It's out on dark websites. And even if you find all the pictures and pull them down, by the time you do that, somebody else has uploaded it someplace else.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And to have kids really understand that, really understand the long-term implications and the conversations we have, in particular with the boys, because they want to play sports, they want to play for a sports team. Whether they do that or not, that's kind of in their mindset. And, there's been 2 professional ball players here in the U.S. that have lost multi-million-dollar contracts for something they did online 10 years ago.
Wow.
And that's the same thing. I said, employers, look at your social media. Future customers, look at your social media. Boyfriends, girlfriends, future husbands and wives and partners, look at your social media. And you have to really think 2, 5, 10, 15 years ahead that if I ever wanted to run for office, is this stupid picture going to stop me from doing that, right? Is it going to stop me from being the CEO of a company? Is it going to stop me from, marrying the person of my dreams because I took some silly picture that someone coerced me into doing? And that's the other piece too that I really try to emphasize with parents is our prefrontal cortex, this part up here that helps us make decisions, isn't fully cooked until we're between 28 and 30.
Wow.
So, and predators know this, right? So here I am, a 14-year-old girl. I've just gone through most of my gangly stuff. I might have had braces. The braces are now off. I might have had curly hair. I figured out how to use a straighten iron, curlers to a straightener, right? I went from glasses to contacts or vice versa, depending on what's in. But I'm still seeing myself as that ugly duckling. And then some handsome guy online tells me I'm beautiful or tells me I'm smart or says, gosh, you're a great photographer. What a great picture. That feeds my self-esteem as a human being. And remember, I'm 14. This isn't done yet. And it's a numbers game for these online predators. They will toss out "you're beautiful" to hundreds of girls and boys to see who bites. And then they'll start a conversation and see who will go the next step and see who will go the next step until you've got, a dozen or so kids out of the hundreds that think have found the love of their life and start exchanging pictures. And you're dealing with generally, not always, a 45-year-old white male. And I like to use the analogy, Liz, if you and I went to the U.S. Open in September and Serena Williams was down on center court, right? And she said, Liz, come on down, right? You'd be like, okay. And they give you a racket. She's like, I'm going to serve to you at 100 miles an hour. Who's going to win that game?
She will.
Exactly.
Yep.
Same thing online. You've got a 45, 50-year-old brain matched with a 14-year-old brain.
Yeah.
Who's going to win that game? And they're so good at being charming and manipulative that these children think it's their fault. And it's not. And so you've got guilt and shame and embarrassment on the side of the victim. And you've got threats and coercion and manipulation on the side of the predator. That's why it's a silent crime. And that's why it's a perfect storm, because my parents told me not to do that. Yeah. And I did.
Well, it's a known fact, right?
Now I can't go talk to them, right? And it's a personal phenomenon. It might be an out there, but it's a personal phenomenon. I've embarrassed myself. Yeah. I now can't go talk to my parents because they've told me not to do this and I did it anyway. Yeah. And so what we coach parents is, we have a great parent toolkit on our website of ways to start the conversations, right? And ways to be able to have their kids feel safe, to come to them and say, Mom, you know that thing you told me not to do? Well, I kind of did it. And your parents are racing through, what did I tell? Which one did I tell?
No, how many things did I tell you not to do that you did?
Let me go through my filing cabinet, right? And then they'll say whatever that is.
Yeah.
And I coach parents. I said, that next 3 seconds is the most powerful 3 seconds of your and your child's life. Because how you answer that question is going to be everything. It's either going to push them farther down that rabbit hole because the guy said you were going to say that, right?
Because they know that.
Yes.
They know that.
You've got that 3 seconds to say, it's okay, honey. You didn't know.
Yep.
We'll work it out. You'll be okay. Let's work it out. Right. And it's the tone. It's how you look at them. Now inside you might be going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Right.
Yeah.
But out here, you've just got to be calm and peaceful and it'll be okay, honey. You know, and I coach parents. I said, if you need a couple minutes to go scream in a pillow, just be like, honey, I'm going to go potty. I'll be right back. Right.
Yeah.
Go get that rage out.
Yeah.
Before you come talk to your child. And with the kids, what we coach them, I said, look, we're human too, right? Yeah. We have feelings, we have emotions. Believe it or not, there was life before you, right? And our job is to keep you safe. And if there's someone out in the world trying to hurt you, you're darn right I'm going to be upset.
Yeah. But
I'm not upset at you. But children always take it about themselves. So I'm like with the kids, I say, you got to give your parents a little space and grace. And with the parents, I'm like, you just got to take a deep breath and be really calm. We're going to work it out, honey. It's okay. Well, I've got your back. And that's really all kids need to hear.
So I noticed that you have a couple programs on your website. So I'm just going to bring the website up so people can see the website.
I'm going to take a drink of my water.
That's your Instagram. And have the website here, Instagram. But there we go. There's the website. So could you share a little bit on the different programs that you have on?
Sure. Well, there's really two mainly, well, three, but two that we really focus on. One is our curriculum that we bring into schools. It's called Empower. And it's 2 90-minute sessions with us. That's the preferred. And how it works, and what I mean by works, not like how we do it, but how it really works for everybody is we'll come in on a Monday night or a Tuesday night, right, and do a parent training, have the educators there, have the counselors there, we'll show the film, have the conversations, preparing them for their kids, right, and then Wednesday, Thursday, we'll talk to the youth. We'll show our film on the first day, and really talk about what human trafficking is, what online exploitation is, and really what a bystander is and how they can they can stop being bystanders right now that they know what it looks like. The second day we cover social media and the laws that protect our kids, because a lot of times kids don't know that there's laws that protect them, like the safe harbor law, right? In Florida, we have a sextortion law that it's technically you're breaking the law when you send an inappropriate picture to someone if you're under the age of 18, and it's against the law if you get it on your phone, and it's even, so it's production, distribution, and hosting of child pornography. And a lot of our kids don't know that, right? So we cover all of that. And then my favorite part of our second day is we spend the last 45 minutes and we have them create posters. And I give them 2 instructions. I say, create a hashtag. I put them in groups of 4 or 6, right? Create a hashtag. And then draw a picture that represents what you learned over the past 2 days. That if you had to share it with somebody, you could. And that's when we know it's gotten in. Like one of my favorite posters we did back in April at a private school, well, it was actually a charter school, is this group of boys, and they draw this like muscly guy, right, who's standing there, and then in teeny tiny print, it's hashtag respect women, hashtag protect women, hashtag women's bodies aren't for sale. And I'm like, I was blown away. Because that's how we know these 13-year-old young men got it.
Yeah.
So that's our curriculum, right? And then we always like to include the business thing, so we can always do a business chamber event in one of the mornings. So everyone's having the same conversation, right? It's no longer a surprise anymore. People are like, yep, I now know what this looks like. I know what it looks like in our community, and here's what we're going to do about it. We give them the hotline number. And we give the youth actions to take inside their school. It's like, look, if you've got a child that, if you've got someone you know eats lunch alone every day, just go sit by him one day. Just go sit by him. Bring your lunch, go, look, we don't have to talk. I just want you to know I'm here for you. And when we go back, because we do surveys, we do pre and post tests, right? Because we want to know what got in, what didn't get in, so we can go back and pump it up, so to speak. When we go back and do our third survey to really see how long this has lasted, like 30% of the kids went and had lunch with someone that mostly ate lunch alone.
Wow.
That's a miracle. And look, I don't know what's going to come out of it. We are planting trees whose shade we will never sit, and I'm okay with that.
Yep.
I'm okay with 10 years from now, when a kid sees another kid at college sitting by themselves, it's just not a thing for them to go up and sit down and go, hi. Because you have no idea the kind of difference that would make for that person, right? And so we give them actual tangible actions to take, and they come up with some other great stuff too, which is fun. And then we do parent tech talks every month. As we're committed to having parents be as educated as possible. It's one of the reasons why I hop on 2 to 3 webinars a week because there's always information coming out and we want to have the latest information, right? I'm very clear what my lane is. We educate middle schoolers. Title I middle schoolers is our sweet spot because nobody really comes in and talks to them about this kind of thing. And they're super appreciative. So we've got that. And so we want the parents to be empowered and equipped. And we do that on Facebook Live. And once a quarter, we do it in Spanish. Oh. So I have several, so we have several mission ambassadors that are bilingual, and it makes a huge difference for the community because there's nuances in every culture that I don't understand, you don't understand. I don't know what it's like to be a Creole woman. I don't know what it's like to be a Hispanic man, right? I don't know. But there's cultural conversations, and that's really what we're committed to bringing in inside the Latin community. And then we also have a CEU program for nurses. We had our training approved by the Emergency Nurses Association. And so we can come in and, train nurses and
yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I seen the nurses and I was like,
and have that conversation. Because, we actually wrote a series of articles for Orlando Medical News for that very reason is I want to, don't quote me. Well, you're going to have to quote me because it's online, but I believe it's like 68% of survivors have gone through the ER department, right, at some point in time while they were being exploited. And 88% say they were not comfortable in saying anything to the, medical personnel. So, really equipping the frontline nurses, the ER nurses, and quite frankly, the maintenance staff and the food service and the cleaning service, because I am clear with the level of trauma that, survivors, warriors are experiencing. There's this hierarchy, right, that they're used to. So a doctor or a nurse would be here and my experience of myself would not be. But if I'm talking to the, cleaning person or the food service person, there's more of a even in my own mind, whether, we're all even in my mind, but you know how brains work, right?
Yeah.
I might be more open to sharing with that person, right? So they is equally need to be trained and educated because if the nurse suspects it and they're not going to say anything to the nurse, there's something that the food service person can say, or the maintenance person can, like, hey, how's it going? Just like be in that
small talk.
Yeah. And just look, it's like, are you doing okay? And you never know what they might say, even though they, if they pulled the, if they're being controlled by a gorilla pimp or familial, if they separate them and go, oh, we have to take her down to x-ray or whatever. If you separate them, you can have a separate conversation. And the x-ray techs and the phlebotomist, like, there's everybody that touches that ER space really has to have a sense of what's it look like and what do I say? And then the third piece, which is the most important, what's our protocol? If my gut's telling me this is probably it, I've asked a couple of questions, I see this person attempting to control them, even when I'm taking them down to x-ray, that's a secondary indicator, right? And then if I ask, or there's bruises or whatever body things that they're there for, it's an opportunity for me as a caregiver to ask some non-evasive questions and have a sense of it, and then be able to offer assistance. And the challenge is because most victims don't think they're victims. Their perpetrators have done such a great job at convincing them it's their fault.
Yep.
That's what they believe. And so they're like, no, I'm fine, because who else is going to feed me? Who else is going to get me my cigarettes? Who else is going to, house me? And probably one of the most poignant things that I heard survivors say in the survivor-led panel was, I knew my pimp loved me because he hit me with an open hand. So that's the context, and the level of trauma. I did a interview with Dr. Phil Toll, who's a phenomenal therapist. He runs the residential care center here in Orlando. And we did a whole piece on, because people are like, well, if they're being harmed, why don't they just leave, right? Having no idea.
Exactly.
Having no idea the level of trauma. And I'm clear. I don't know how this thing all works, but I do know it's not a choice. Like, it's not like me or you. If someone was coming at us with, something to harm us, we'd get the heck out of the way, right? But
I don't know. I'm a survivor of abuse, so
okay.
So I've lived it, and it's not as easy, right? Because I hear that all the time. Well, why didn't you leave? If it was that bad, why didn't you leave?
Yeah, there's a thing called trauma bonding, and he spent 40 minutes. It's on my YouTube channel. I got to tell you, it's one of the best interviews, and I share it all the time for people to really understand. It takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years to have your brain recovered just your brain from the trauma, and that's everyday care, not once a week or once a month care.
It's an everyday thing. It's an everyday healing thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As a survivor, it's an everyday healing process. If you think you're going to get healed by just going to see a psychiatrist or something once a week or once a month, you're not really working on healing. You're just working on the moment, moment. And then once that meeting is done, back to the same feeling you get, right? So you're not actually healing yourself. And that's why I'm an advocate for abuse and topics that need to be spoken about. And this is why I opened this door up for, right, as the platform, is to get awareness. And why are we not talking about these subjects, especially with the numbers?
Yes.
So, Jen, do you think that there'll ever be an end to child trafficking?
Well, Liz, that's a really great question. I was, Nkosi has 2 live sessions. One was today with the CEO and a couple of her people that work specifically in this space, and one's a former police officer and actually former chief of police. And I'm of the same belief as well, is that we're never going to arrest our way out of this. We just aren't. We're not going to arrest our way out of this, and I don't think we're going to educate our way out of this. I think it's all part of it.
Yep.
In reality, it's reducing the demand. And that's an avenue. It's not my specialty, but boy, golly, people that do that, I am such an advocate for that, because I think a lot of it starts with trauma in the family.
Yep.
And if we can heal the family, I think we can start to decrease the demand, and then you've got the advent of pornography. I think pornography plays a huge part in this.
Yeah.
The moment we opened up the internet in 1996, the U.S. became the #1 consumer of pornography.
Wow.
Yeah. And in the Philippines, I just read an article I posted on my LinkedIn that the average age of sexual consent in the Philippines is 12. The government lowered the age to 12. Now, remember, we talked about prefrontal cortex unable to make decisions, real good decisions, right? You can make them. I just don't know how they're going to, So they're actually harming their future for short-term satisfaction.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is sad. It is truly sad.
So I don't know. You know what? I hope so. That's to answer your question. I The reason I'm so adamant about preventing our kids is we can create the next generation of abolitionists. We can create the next generation of young men that hashtag respect women, hashtag protect women. Because, one of the other conversations we have with the young men is, look, I ask, how many of you have younger siblings? Generally about 3/4 of the room will raise their hand. I'm like, great. Would you want their picture of a body part on someone else's phone? And I don't say a word.
Yeah.
Because they connect the dots very rapidly. They're like, and I say, great, stop asking.
Yeah.
That is someone's daughter. That is one of maybe your sister's best friends. That could be your future wife. You have no idea. So please stop asking for inappropriate pictures because you think everybody else is, and it's the in thing to do.
So what are the numbers on the boys? Because I'm really curious about the boys, because boys are harder to come forward with anything sexually, right?
They are. I've heard anywhere from 30% as high as 46% up in New York.
Wow.
Yeah, I am blessed in that I have relationships and work with law enforcement across the country. And, the challenge, back to one of the things I stated earlier, is that people don't know their victims, right? You've got suppressed memories, repressed memories, and I think things happen to boys and they don't talk about it. A good friend of mine up in Canada, as a matter of fact, Dr. Kelly Palfrey, she's written a great book called Men Too. And she interviewed, I think, 6 or 7 survivors of male abuse. And we talked about, she really talked about why they don't come forward. And if you've ever seen the documentary, The Mask You Live In, it's a great documentary. It's side by side, The Mask You Live In and Miss, MISS Representation. If you watch them back to back, you'll get a real good sense of why we are where we are. The misrepresentation addresses the commoditization of women and the reduction of who we are as value. And The Mask You Live In really addresses the, man up, suck it up, don't walk like a girl, don't act like a girl, don't cry like a girl. And by the time our boys are in middle school, having all the same emotions we do, they're taught to suppress it. So then you've got fights, then you've got suicide, you've got all the other things that come with repressed emotions.
Yeah.
So, it is a tangled web we weave. And, our one small lane, our one tiny part is to reach as many middle schoolers and parents as we can, so we can begin to alter the narrative of, no, there's really the difference between me and a guy is a couple of body parts and a couple of hormones. That's it. We have the same hopes. We have the same dreams. We have the same fears. We have the same concerns. It's all the same emotions, right? We all have that little thing in our brain called the amygdala. So, when we feel threatened or we have fear, boy, it takes right overrides the prefrontal cortex, and you're off to the races. And so, to have parents and kids be educated about that and really understand, boy, that impulse, let's take a breath. We'll just pause, take a breath. I coach a lot of adults, and they're like, but Jan, I don't feel fill in the blank. I'm like, I got it. Burp. That feeling will go away. It's a swath of chemicals.
Right?
Just you have pause for a moment.
Yeah.
Right. And be like, okay, what am I feeling? And more importantly, why am I feeling that? What's really happening right now? Am I being threatened right now in this moment? No, I'm actually talking to Liz via StreamYard. Okay. Now that I know where I am in reality, then I can start to check myself.
Yeah.
And a lot of the survivor warriors we work with, we talk about Connie Rose in particular talks about the 4 breaths, in for 4, hold for 4,
Yep.
out for 4, out, just to bring yourself back to yourself, and realizing that you're reacting either to something that's not real or something that happened in the past that isn't happening right now. If you can get present to your body and present to right now, it's like, okay, I can deal with whatever that is.
Yeah. So could you share a little bit about your film that you made?
Sure.
Trapped in the Trade. I really would like to know more about this. Can we see this like on Netflix? Where can we see this?
No, you cannot. That is it's our intellectual property, and it's our foundation for all of our trainings.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about, I am not a filmmaker, so we're clear about that, but I am now. I was driving home one day from visiting my mom. She had fallen and she was in rehab, and I had quite the conversation with God, because all this stuff, with trafficking was coming my way, and I hadn't quite gone to Ethiopia yet, and I was just like, dude, what are you trying to tell me, right? And I heard the word documentary. I'm like, whatever. I'm driving down Curry Ford Road, right? And I turn and I go to get gas, and this time it was much louder. It's like, documentary. And I'm like, fine, whatever, okay, I don't know, whatever. Right? Literally, I went home and I opened up my laptop and I wrote the film in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this was, 8 years ago. It's 2014. 7 years ago, yeah. And, I wrote about things I didn't know about that I know about now. I didn't know about it. And, I got the angles, I got the verbiage, I got everything. And we shot it in 2 weeks and then premiered up in New York. And it shows the intentional grooming and recruitment of children by children. And if you are familiar with the Epstein case, that's exactly what he had these girls do. Is someone would lure the first girl in, and then she would lure the next girl in, and it was just girl recruiting girl.
Yeah, I watched that. It really was hard to watch.
Mm-hmm. And it's a short film. It's only 28 minutes. It does not have a happy ending, which is why we don't put it on Netflix, because it really has people question, right? It opens up their heart because they're concerned for this character. And it also really is like, okay, well, God, what would I do? Because we have them look for two things. So it actually reduces the emotional impact of the film. Is we have the students look for all the bystanders, right? So it has their brain engaged in something else. Then we also ask them, because there's a part in the film at the party, you can see it in the trailer, where she's roofied, right? And so we ask the kids, what would you do? What would you, if you were there, you were at the party, you were at the girl that said, don't take the drink, really, like, I want to know, what would you do, right? And it's kind of cute because the boys get all tough and they're like, well, I'd, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I got it. You'd blah, 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 blah. I said, now I have a question for you. I said, what if there's two guys behind her that are packing heat? Then what would you do? They're like, oh, well, so because I want them to do the critical thinking. I'm a huge fan of the Socratic method of education, where I ask powerful questions and you do the thinking, just try and work out the answer for yourself, because then it's yours.
Yep.
You've discovered the answer. I haven't given it to you.
Yep.
You've discovered the answer. And that's why we love the posters at the end, because that's them expressing what they got. It's them sharing, right? And it's the tactile piece of the education. So it really, it's full circle for them to really walk away with understanding what human trafficking is, knowing the signs to look for, really getting a sense of what kind of conversation they can have with someone they think might be dealing with something. It's like I said, mostly, if you just check in, if you check in often enough, at some point in time when you ask, are you okay? They're going to look at you and go, no, I'm not. Yeah. And you're going to go, okay, let's go down to the nurse's office, right? Or let's go to the counselor. Let's talk, right? Mm-hmm. And it's being that persistent, consistent, loving, kind, accepting person, because we know no one chooses this life. The 5-year-old doesn't wake up one morning and go, yep, I want someone to rape me 15 times a night. Yep, that's what I want when I grow up. No one chooses that. No. And so to bring compassion and grace and love to individuals that are suffering from whatever kind of level of abuse, whether it's familial abuse or child abuse or bullying, or maybe there's a learning disability and it hasn't been caught yet, so they may be being bullied because they don't know how to do the math problem. I mean, there's a variety of things that can cause a child trauma. Yeah. And so for us as their partners and to encourage the other youth to just bring some compassion. And that's why I love middle schoolers, is their brains fully developed enough that they can comprehend the complex conversations we have.
Yeah.
And they still care. They have empathy, and they want the world to be right. They want it all to be okay. And this is a way that they have access to do that.
Yeah. So Jen, I want to get into some tea questions now with you.
Okay.
Because I do the same thing. I like to pick the brain, and I'd like you to give me your cup of tea. So I'm going to give you the word tea, and I'd like a word for each letter.
Okay, let's see. T for talent. Every single human being has a gift or a talent that's unique to them, right? It's kind of part of our life's journey to go find that. The E I would consider to be empowerment. Really, once you have that talent, how can you use it to empower not only yourself, but others, maybe, right? And A, I'm going to go with adventure.
Oh, I like that. I haven't gotten that one yet. I like that.
Life is an adventure. And if we can be with the roller coaster of it, right? Knowing that when we're in the valley, we're more than likely about to head up. And if we're at the top of the mountain, some point in time, we're either going to plateau up or we might make our way back down, you know, and just really enjoying the journey and bringing love and peace and compassion and grace to humanity, because it's missing right now.
Yeah, it is.
You know, just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean you have to be mad at me.
Exactly, right?
Really, you know, and if you, I'm just going to use a sports analogy. You know, you've got the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago, what's the other team? Anyway, they have two baseball teams, right? Cubs. You're either a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan. Would you alienate someone because they were a White Sox fan? Like, you just want to take a deep breath and go, yeah. Okay, Cubs is my team. White Sox is your team. Let's go have a beer and we'll talk about our favorite players.
Exactly, right?
That would be way more fun than the other stuff that's happening out in the world. And so just really bringing that, I don't have to agree with you and you don't have to agree with me. Actually, the world works better that way.
Exactly.
If we all don't agree on everything, because then you actually start to come to the middle, which is probably the better answer.
Exactly. Like I always tell everybody, I'm not everyone's cup of tea.
No.
But at least try the tea.
Yes.
You know?
Well,
so,
and I think too, that's so good, Liz, is I'm not everyone's cup of tea either. Okay.
Yeah.
However, my intentions are always with love.
Yeah.
I may not say the right thing. I may not always do the right thing. I may not, act the right way, but it's never out of malice.
Yeah.
And I believe most of humanity is the same. Now, you back me into a corner and you threaten my kid, different.
You're getting a different cup of tea from me. I say the same thing. I'm a nice person, but put me in a corner, put me in that spot, and you will see a different side of me. And I believe we all have that in us, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's the amygdala, fight, flight, or freeze, Yeah. And if we can override that, we're going to go back to the Sox and the Cubs analogy, because you can really put anything in those two spaces, right? If I get that amygdala is going off, it's like, hang on a second. Okay, Jan, you just got upset about a baseball player. Like,
now, he didn't swing that. He got a strikeout. What are you talking about?
Present to, golly, what am I so upset about?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, all right, it's just that. And that's not really happening right now. We're talking baseball. Okay, let's go back to the game. It just, to be able to be responsible for our own experiences and our own reactions, and apologize and clean up when we've messed stuff up, and then be gracious when people have done the same to us. Yeah. We're human. We are not perfect. We do not come with a handbook. And it'd be great if we did, though.
I think taking accountability, right? Mm-hmm. Being responsible.
Absolutely.
Because, and just perfect, I really don't like the word perfect, because it puts a stigma on children, right?
Yes, it
does. To be perfect. And then they're like, okay, but I'm not perfect. So now you're not going to love me anymore because I'm not perfect. And it's, let's just be us. Let's just be human beings.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And no matter what we look like, it was really interesting. I think it was on LinkedIn last night. There was this beautiful picture, they're just lovely couple. And the caption would, this isn't exact, but the caption was something like, when you love someone, you see beyond this thing. We're just a skin sack. It's what's here. Does that person make you laugh? Do they make you feel loved? Do they make you feel welcome? Do they support you? Do they cheer you on? Do they also kick you in the ass when they know, right, you're not doing what you said you wanted, right?
Yep.
And so it's like being that for one another. And I think in reality, mostly, that's where all of us are. And if we pay too much attention to what's happening out in the world or what's going on MSM, we can get jaded really quickly. So my litmus test is the world, not what's on video.
Yeah. So what final message would you like to give the viewers that are watching now and watching the replay later?
That there is hope. There is hope, and it starts with me and you. And what I mean by that is, that one moment in time, that one smile, that one door held open, that one check-in. I was on the phone earlier today with a girlfriend of mine who would be considered one of us, very strong, very powerful. Mostly people think we all have it handled.
Yeah.
And so they don't check in on us. So check in on your strong friends and see how they're doing. Invite them out. Invite them for a cup of tea, right? Invite them out for a walk or a saunter. Invite them to go see a movie, because I promise you, they're mostly the ones that call you. So, be the one that brings the hope to your environment. Be that shining light of what's possible. And on your bad days, pick up the phone and call your friends and go, I'm having one of those days. Can we talk? Because it's okay to not be okay. We're in an unprecedented time right now. And I was sharing with another friend of mine, I said, I'm exhausted. And I'm exhausted because I'm tired of being lied to.
That's how I feel.
And I think the world is like that. And we're exhausted. And I don't want to take it out on anybody else. And so it's like, okay, I have to be responsible and, take a day off or two and go do some self-care and take care of myself and it's not the end yet. And my daughter has a saying, it's that, it'll all be okay at the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. So, just lift each other up, pray or meditate, whatever you choose to do as often as you can for your peace here and for peace in the world. Because we're the ones that are going to actually have it all turn. No one with a title and no one that rides in a bunch of black shiny cars is going to make the difference in the world. Yeah. We are. It's us. One conversation at a time, one smile at a time, one sack of groceries at a time, one car drive at a time. Yeah. We're the ones.
It's the little things that are going to make the difference.
It is.
Well, I really want to thank you, Jen, for joining me today in the studio and for sharing. And for all the viewers out there that are watching now and watching the replay later, please speak out, please reach out, talk to your children. And if you'd like to know more on Paving the Way Foundation, please check out Miss Liz's Teatime page and check out Paving the Way. She's also on Instagram, I believe. Mm-hmm. And she has the website, so please check out. There's amazing programs. So one question that I want to ask you before I close up Teatime: are all your programs global or only local?
So yes and no. So we've got 45 mission ambassadors across the country in the United States. Okay. And we're actually working to partner with a company up in Canada. They talk to high schoolers. She's like, we don't really like middle schoolers. I go, it's okay. I'm not a fan of high schoolers. You take the high schoolers, we'll take the middle schoolers. We'll go, and it's really that. It's being able to find your lane and choose it. So, we have educated in the Dominican Republic. We've educated in the Bahamas, all via Zoom. And we have a program called Mission Ambassadors Program. Actually, we have Mission Ambassadors in training and then Mission Ambassadors. So if this calls to you, if you're like, I got to get involved, I invite you to do one of three things, okay? One is put the 800 number in your phone, and that is 888-3737-888. That's the national trafficking hotline. I think Canada now has their own trafficking hotline. So find your trafficking hotline in the country that you're in and put it in your phone. That's the first thing. The second thing is share what you've learned. Start a conversation, right? And if you really want to get more involved, you can go on our website and fill out the volunteer form or the mission ambassador form, or you know what? We're a 501c3. And we're playing a game of creating 100 monthly donors over the next month, right? So if this calls your heart and you're like, you know what, I can not do Starbucks 2 days in a row and offer $10, then you just educated 2 kids. So that's kind of how it works. So just invite you to, come stand shoulder to shoulder with us and support what we do. And if you're in a foreign country, if you're in another country and you're interested in bringing our program to you, just pick up the phone and call. Our programs are, email me or text me or find me on Instagram. Our programs are translated in Spanish, Creole, and Portuguese. Okay. If French comes up, we'll get it translated in French and any other language, because that's now available out online. Because we believe that the more people that can have this conversation, the better.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jan. And thank you again for joining me in the studio. I really encourage everyone to check out Paving the Way Foundation and see how you can get involved and make a difference. We can make a difference one cup of tea at a time. And I will see everyone next week with a new guest. And the guest will be speaking on education and tech and stuff. So all you gamers out there who want to know a little bit more, tune in to Tea Time with Miss Liz. And again, thank you, Jen, for joining me today in the studio. And we will stay in touch, because I will see you at the reunion show in December. So to all the viewers out there, thank you again. And if this Tea Time has triggered anybody, that was not the intention, please reach out to me and speak to me, and I will make sure to talk to you one-on-one. And if you'd like to speak to Jen, please reach out to Jen as well. Absolutely. So again, thank you again for tuning in to Tea Time with Miss Liz, and I will see you next week with a new Tea Time.